Star Trek takes on racism in today's episode of Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Trekking Through Compliance, Episode 70, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. In this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, we consider the episode Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, which aired on January 10, 1969, and occurred on Stardate 5730.2. Story synopsis. The Federation starship Enterprise is on a mission to help decontaminate the polluted atmosphere of the planet Arianis when sensors detect a Federation shuttlecraft that was reported stolen. The craft is brought along with its alien pilot who identifies himself as Lokai, a political refugee from the planet Cheron. Loki's most striking feature is that his skin is black on one side of his body and white on the other side, and he claims to be a political refugee from Cheron. Shortly thereafter, sensors detect another spacecraft in pursuit of the Enterprise. The alien craft destroys itself, or rather disintegrates, but not before its pilot, Bele, transports to the Enterprise bridge. He is colored black and white, similar to Lokai. Bele explains that he is on a mission to retrieve political traitors. His current quarry is Lokai, who has been chasing for 50,000 Earth years. Bele is taken to Lokai, and the two begin to argue about the history of their peoples, almost coming to blows. Bele demands that Captain Kirk take him and Lokai to Cheron. Kirk refuses, telling him he will have to make his case to Federation authorities. Sometimes later, the ship changes course to Cheron, and Bele announces that his will has taken control of the ship. Lokai demands the death of Bele, and Kirk orders them both to be taken to the brig. Unfortunately, a force field generated by both aliens makes that impossible. With no other way to regain control, Kirk threatens to destroy the Enterprise and begins the ship's auto-destruct sequence. In the last seconds of the countdown, Bele relents, and the ship is returned to its course to Arianis. As Bele continues angrily to press his matter with Starfleet, he reveals the source of the conflict with Lokai. He and the people of Cheron are black on their right sides, while Lokai's people are white on their right sides. The distinction is lost on the ship's officers, who leave it for the legal authorities at the next starbase to decide what to do. Once the Arianis mission is completed, Bele takes control of the Enterprise again, this time disabling the self-destruct system. When the ship arrives at Cheron, Spock can find no sign of intelligent life. Lokai and Bele realize they were the only ones left of their peoples. Enraged, they attack each other, their force fields threatening to damage the ship. Lokai breaks away and Bele pursues him, and the two eventually beam down to the now destroyed planet. So what's the fun fact for this episode? According to the original, or rather the Memory Alpha listing on this episode, the original story concept did not depict the aliens with bicolored skin. Fred Friedberger, the producer, recalled that Gene Kuhn originally had a devil with a tail chasing an angel. Episode director Judd Taylor came up with the idea of a bicolored skin shortly after the episode began filming. His original suggestion was that they be half black, half white, one color from the waist up and the other color from the waist down, but wearing reversed color schemes. The central idea stuck, but the colors were finally separated along the vertical axis rather than the horizontal. This made for better filming and also made costuming much easier. It was an interesting reaction and reception to this episode. Fred Freiberg, the producer, stated this was one of the episodes he was most proud of. However, Harlan Ellison thought the episode a terrible one with a weak message. He said, quote, "Roddenberry may have been a big deal progressive, but I never heard of him giving a dime to the civil rights movement. Now, I don't know what his personal attitude was, because he was always talking about the perfectibility of mankind, which is BS, and talking about equality. But it was a very awkward kind of liberalism, as evidenced by that stupid stunt where people are painted half white and half black. Kind of heavy-handed wannabe liberal thing that embarrasses everyone anyone who has true feelings about racism. I must say that having grown up in the segregated and then racial South, I found this episode to be extremely powerful. The hatred that is portrayed is in many ways what I grew up with. I went to segregated schools until the time I was in high school. And unfortunately, we have that kind of blatant racism, again, brought by Donald Trump and his ilk. So the scourge of racism still exists. It really is brought forward in this episode. And I hope you'll watch this episode and think about the invidiousness of racism and what it can do and does do to destroy a civilization. While this show is clearly about racial prejudice and therefore conscious bias, I thought I would use this episode to take a look at compliance, the role of compliance in unconscious bias. So unconscious bias is a pervasive issue in the workplace, impacting hirings, promotion, performance evaluations, and even everyday interactions. Compliance professionals play a crucial role in addressing this challenge by implementing strategies that promote fairness, justice, and inclusivity. So what are some specific strategies? Number one, training and education. You should try to have unconscious bias awareness training by providing education for employees about the nature of unconscious bias, its impact on decision-making, and strategies for mitigating its effects. Diversity and inclusion is a critical part in this arena, as you should offer workshops and seminars that explore different cultural perspectives, promote empathy and understanding, and equip employees with tools for inclusive communications. And then use real-life scenarios and role-playing exercises to help employees recognize and address unconscious bias in their own actions and interactions. Number two, recruitment and hiring practices. Implement blind hiring practices such as removing names and personal information from resumes during initial screening process to reduce bias based on gender, race, or other protected characteristics. Ensure interview panels are diverse and representative of your company's workforce to minimize the influence of unconscious bias on candidate selection. Next, use structured interview questions and standardized evaluation criteria to ensure fairness and consistency in your hiring process. Number three, performance management and development. Develop clear and objective performance metrics that are free from subjective biases and focus on measurable outcomes. Next, provide regular and constructive feedback to employees, focusing on their strengths and areas for improvement rather than relying on subjective impressions. And then implement mentorship and sponsorship programs to provide support and guidance to employees from underrepresented groups, helping them advance their careers. 4, workplace culture and communications. Encourage open dialogue and feedback about workplace culture, fostering a safe space for employees to raise concerns about potential bias and discrimination. Promote the use of inclusive language and communication practices that avoid stereotypes and promote respect for all individuals. And ensure that leadership demonstrates a strong commitment to diversity and inclusion, setting the tone literally for the entire organization. 5, data analysis and monitoring. Track diversity data across various levels of your organization to identify areas where unconscious bias may be impacting representation. Conduct regular audits and reviews of recruitment, performance management, and other software, or rather other HR processes to identify and address potential biases. And use data to inform decision-making, ensuring that decisions are based on objective criteria and not influenced by unconscious bias. By implementing these strategies, compliance professionals can play a vital role in fostering a more inclusive and equitable workplace, fulfilling your obligations under the evaluation of corporate compliance programs for both justice and fairness, where every employee has the opportunity to thrive, and you indeed are a better organization. I hope you'll join us tomorrow on Trekking Through Compliance, where we take a look at the Mark of Gideon.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.